Progressive presents Forced Metaphors about bundling your home and auto.
In sports, 3 goals is a hat trick. And when you bundle your home and auto with Progressive, you get a hat trick of great savings and round-the-clock protection. So you might be thinking, wait, that's 2 things. A hat trick is 3. But in this metaphor, great savings counts as 2 goals, and so does round-the-clock protection. So it's like 4 goals, and that's more than 3. It's basic math.
Forced Metaphors, presented by Progressive. Bundle and protect today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Discount not available in all states or situations.
Jackson Hewitt needs you to know 3 things about filing taxes this year. 1, there are thousands of dollars worth of new tax credits on the table. 2, you have to file for them to make sure you get the right amount. 3, a Jackson Hewitt Tax Pro will help track down every credit you deserve. Tax credits for being a parent, taking care of a parent, going to school, and so much more. You don't want to miss out on thousands. Jackson Hewitt knows that. Discover thousands in tax credits and get your biggest refund guaranteed. Learn more at jacksonhewitt.com.
Hey, how you doing? What's up?
What's up?
Dick Durbin was just tweeting about how he was co-sponsoring a bill to end our dependence on Russian energy. So I was just chiming in with that. Everybody's all on board with this, you know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because, what have we talked about several times? Energy diversification.
Right.
And that's where, like you said, having a bunch of different vehicles, having gas, having electric, having, I'd love to see hydrogen be one of the runners in there. And the more diverse your energy sources are, the more diverse your energy usage is, the less likely you are to be affected by stuff like this.
It is time now for something positive.
We might be headed to the promised land, the truth, and finding our external liberty once we internally liberate ourselves.
Problem can only be solved when there is a kind of coalition of conscience.
Because that is how it works. This is the beginning, it is not the finale, and that's why we're here, and that's why we rally.
We've got to be that creative minority.
Find a way to get in the way. I got in trouble. It was good trouble. It was necessary trouble.
Frankly, I know we've got to do something.
I agree. Somebody said it really easily. The best way to get off of dependence of foreign energy is to get off of the dependence of foreign energy. Anyway, Hey, welcome to Public Access America. My name is Jason. His name is Jeffrey. We are in a no-fly zone right now, so beware of that. We will shoot you down, Jeffrey. We will shoot you down.
I'm used to getting shot down. Wait. That's something different.
At the beginning of the week, I understood that a no-fly zone would be like devastating because we would have to shoot things in Russia that would shoot back at us, and that would start a problem, right? And then it became down to, I was really mad at Israel around Tuesday because I was like, they have that Iron Dome technology. We have this Patriot technology. Why aren't we sending that in and giving it to them? And then somebody finally explained, well, it would take like about a year to train people on how to use that. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then I was like, well, what about these fighter jets? Just give Ukraine the fighter jets. And then I was like, well, these fighter jets are all tagged with like NATO symbols, right? So it's like,
that doesn't mean anything. It's the issue is like, for example, everybody's like, oh, well, why don't we give them F-22s and F-35s? And the answer is their pilots aren't trained on them.
Right.
That'd be like, that would be like, that would be like me handing you, I would say like an old English manuscript and tell you to read it fluently. Yeah, right. There are some things that carry over, but you still have to learn how to actually go through the entire thing. And that's the issue is that, if Ukrainian pilots were trained on F-15s, F-16s, F-18s, we got plenty of those. We could hand those over, but they're trained on MiGs, the big 29 and Sukhoi 25s, I think. And so it's just a matter of, even if, we could hand the technology over, that's not an issue. It's that their pilots are trained on it. And so they literally, they wouldn't be able to use it.
Agreed. And so that's why we're stuck. But holy cow, like There was a shipment where the Turks are sending like unmanned fighter drones. That's cool. The Czechs are sending like rifles and AK-47s. How cool is that? Like Finland is sending these Stinger missiles. Thank you to Poland. Like I look down, we don't have any listenership in Russia anymore, by the way, but we do have a listenership in Poland. And thank you to all of our servicemen and women over there and all the volunteers that are taking care of the refugees. That is just so cool and open door. And I hope we'll get into stories later on about some problems with the process of immigration between the border. But right now, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's working in effort with Ukraine. And hi, Ukraine. You know, I understand you can still get us. Thank you to Elon Musk, you know, so things are working out. I have a few quickies and stuff and stories and stuff, but what really scared you the most this week?
You know, the fact that, you know, Putin keeps moving the goalpost and saying, if you keep allowing soldiers to, you know, former soldiers to cross over into Ukraine to fight for Ukraine, we'll consider that an act of war. If you keep supplying arms to Ukraine, we'll consider that an act of war. If you keep adding on sanctions, we'll consider that an act of war. At this point, Russia, you know, Putin is looking to just have his declaration for war.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that it's like, look, you know, if you want this to end, just go the fuck home.
Right. Well, his only strategy now, I think, is to increase it into a world war conflict so that at the end he can say, see, we were all bad. That's his only out. I mean, otherwise, what can he do? He can't withdraw. He can't. There's no way the sanctions will ever be lifted because there's dead bodies. You know what I mean? There's destroyed property. So even if Russia like said, oh, we're sorry. Yeah, we're to blame. Here's our concessions. You can't fix that because there's dead bodies. And that's what confuses me. So I don't know. That was scary. They're overall moving the goalpost, the threats of nuclear conflicts, and then shooting at I just turned on the news and it was a nuclear plant on fire. And I was like, good Lord. But by the end, I was like, all right, everything is okay. But wow, that freaked me out for a good hot second. You know what I mean?
That was insane. And that is absolutely insane. And unfortunately, like that, I think that we're going to see more of that in the future.
Is that because of stupidity or planning?
Yes.
Okay.
That was stupid planning, is what that was.
Well, I mean, was like Vladimir Putin sitting in the Kremlin going, "Oh no," like, you know, or was he like, "Yes, that's what I wanted"? So that's what I'm curious about.
It's hard to say. Like at this point, it's hard to say like what the hell he's thinking anymore. Like,
right. It's just he's using plans from the 19th century in, you know, this war. And it's like, I don't think he realizes there's social media and nuclear power plants to contend with in a chaos driven atmosphere. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, just the fact of the matter is that he is doing some really fucking dumb stuff.
Right.
And I was watching a clip yesterday of Russian Hind. It's a MiG-24 helicopter just get absolutely decimated by a Stinger missile. Like, I don't think his calculation for what an air assault would look like, and this is and I would say this is why he just rolled over Ukraine is that in the 8 years since Crimea, we had a lot of time to train Ukraine on how to use all of these different weapons.
Right.
And they have just been absolutely decimating the Russian armed forces. In between the Javelin missiles taking out armored columns and the Stinger missiles taking out helicopters, it has left very little for their air force to be able to, fight the Ukrainians. And even then, you've had the Ukrainian pilots are doing a fantastic job with taking on the Russians, despite using older aircraft. and older airframes, and then you had one of the propaganda things you saw going around was, oh, there's no way that a plane like that could take down one of our newer aircraft. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, if your pilot isn't getting any fucking flying time and your pilots aren't that well trained, or simple, or just the simple fact that you underestimate how hard the Ukrainians are going to fight.
Yeah.
They got nothing to lose except for their homeland.
Right. And the Russian soldiers, they don't want to fight this war. A lot of them are just giving up. They're just running their trucks out of gas, getting out and going back to Russia. I mean, walking that way,
Right. And the number of people who are, getting captured, and it's demoralizing because they were told that they were beating Nazis, and then they find out they are the Nazis.
Right, that they're killing Russians.
It's really just, it's unfortunate. I mean, even Germany had to go out and say, look, we're kind of the experts on Nazism and you guys aren't fighting it.
Right. That's true.
That's pretty oof.
Yeah, no, I get it. Ukraine keeps asking for things and I'm like, you understand we can't do that. Like, come up with another direction, and because they're just crying for a no-fly zone, and it's like, we can't do that. Is there anything else? So here's my simple stupid idea, right? And that is just to send them American flags and tell them to put them on top of their buildings. I think my thought was, when Zelensky applied for the EU, he should have gotten stamped and approved. I think the UK should have sent them paperwork to make them members of the UK. I think America should have made Ukraine a district of America. I think it should have just immediately happened. You know what I mean? And
that would be an interesting concept. I mean, we have no precedent in that, and
who cares? Let's do it. Let's try it.
This is where it's really tough right now, because, like, for example, you have Finland and Sweden saying, look, we're having to redo our calculus. We never wanted to be a part of NATO, but Russia, right, you're literally off your fucking rocker. We don't know that we got much choice.
Right.
And Putin's just like, fuck it, I'll go to war with you too. And it's like, that's a terrible idea, because I guarantee you, if you go to war with Finland or Sweden, the Norwegians are coming in swinging.
Oh, of course, but we're not.
Well, and that's the thing is that we would at that point.
Could we?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? They're not
NATO members, but
right.
by that point, the war is already spreading throughout Europe, and what choice are we going to have?
Well, what if he just finishes off Ukraine and then in 10 years attack Finland?
They're not going to have the resources to run that kind of a war for that long.
They'll be in NATO by then. That's my point. Everybody's going to want to. Somebody said
Moldova wants to be in NATO.
Yeah, Moldova is scared to death that they're next. And the truth is he's testing the fences in every country. And somebody said, who's next? And I said, the weakest one is next. You know what I mean? Because that's obvious. If that's us, then that's us. If it's Moldova, then it's Moldova. If it's Poland, it's going to be Poland. You know what I mean?
Well, that's one of those things where it was Moldova was, I want to say they were looking. There was a question about whether or not Moldova would become part of, was it Bulgaria? I want to say they're right next to. My geography's good, but it sometimes is a little bit questionable. So let me pull this up here real quick.
Countries change names, they change statuses, but that's all done without war, right? Empires made these borders, even in the Middle
Romania.
East.
It was Romania. Excuse me. It's Romania.
Oh, I dig Romania, man.
So I couldn't remember if it was Bulgaria or Romania, but it's Romania. And, part of why Moldova is, its own country is that Romania and Moldova just couldn't quite get along enough.
Sure.
But if Moldova decided to fold into Romania, then they would be a NATO country by default.
Okay. I'm okay with that too.
And so there's a bunch of questions in that regard too, whether or not you could do that. But then you have this breakaway autonomous region in Moldova called Transnistria, which they basically it was like the Soviet Union never quit.
All right, so like Dunlop or whatever they are in Ukraine, those little segments.
Oh no! This is like straight up like they still are communists, like actual.
Right, they're a separatist region within a country.
Yeah, they're a separatist region, but it's, they function the way the old Soviet Union did, and they still, follow the teachings of Lenin and Stalin and all that other fun stuff. Like
Wow.
it's literally like a fucking time bubble where it just didn't quit. It's crazy to watch. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But
Is it prospering?
no, and they also have 1,500 Russian troops there.
All right. I mean, like I keep saying, communism as a philosophy might work if people just worked it. They're not working the system. They go to kleptocrat pretty quick. Is that's what's happening in that region too?
Oh, I guarantee it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens with any communist country. I mean, Orwell summed it up in Animal Farm quite fantastic. Some pigs are more equal than others, and that's really all it boils down to. And that was the difference between communism and capitalism. Capitalism never pretended otherwise.
Right. Yeah, that's the whole point of it. Once you get rid of everything else and it's only the pigs, then yeah, the lesser pigs are the lessers, right? And it's there's always going to be inequality. Like I think equality is part of the matrix, like the carrot we chase,
Oh, absolutely.
We're never going to have it, but it's always fun to try.
Well, and that's one of those things, like, why it's one of the biggest reasons why I don't believe in banning books, no matter how fucking dumb they are. Like I'm sorry, but when you look at the Communist Manifesto on paper, it looks fantastic.
Right.
Practice never works. It will never work.
Right.
And everybody keeps going, well, but that wasn't real communism. But that wasn't real communism. It's like, you understand that the way that all of these communist movements started out look a lot like what quote unquote real communism was supposed to be. But it only takes about 20 years, and then all of a sudden it looks exactly like what it looked like in China, in the Soviet Union, in Cuba, in Yugoslavia, in name any communist country, and it exactly goes that direction every single time. Why?
Yep.
Because power corrupts, and you put people in power, they're going to inevitably take as much as they can, and especially when they can sell a good enough lie that everybody's going to be equal.
Right. No, I think I'm a big fan of the movie Gandhi, and I know what the UK did to oppress places like India and Australia and the Bahamas. The way they treated the people, there was no equality there, and those people all had to fight for it. But I just don't. I think communism might work, and I just think, like, that's the same thing they think about capitalism. In 10 years, capitalism will always go to this fending for ourselves, the rich at the top mentality. But they all stray through socialism. You know what I mean?
That's the thing is like, I would say that what you see with, with communism, where you have that group of people that tend to take advantage of and have the most wealth, and that group in capitalism, those are juxtapositions of each other. They're at complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And the reality is that when you look at communes, they work on a very small scale.
Right. I'm thinking of sunny Ukraine, the old place
And that's the thing is it's and that's like, Ukraine's not even communist. They're not close to that.
No, but there was a city called Sunny, where communism was like the utopia. That Russians came to Ukraine and made this place sunny, and it was like a co-op, just like we always talk about. And you're right. In a small community level, it works with the group working for the whole, right?
And that's the thing is that it's really easy for it to work on small scales. Why? Because everybody knows everybody, and the idea of screwing somebody over doesn't feel good.
Right.
But the moment that it moves into any type of a larger scale, it starts to fall apart really quickly. And I get why. Everybody values, and that's part of the problem is that everybody values their work, their labor, their anything differently. And so it's really unfortunate that people don't see that.
Right.
I would love it if all of us could actually work together. All of us have equality of opportunity, equality of outcome, equality of any number of given things. But the reality is that no matter how hard you try, that's never going to be the case. That doesn't mean that we should just give up and say, fuck it, free for all, like what we're seeing on the other end of the spectrum of capitalism. But, I mean, even if you look at Biden's State of the Union, capitalism without competition is not capitalism.
Right. And he's a capitalist.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that you and I have talked about several times is that, you have to have effective competition. And, and unfortunately, like, especially in our conversations around, prescription drugs and all of that, there is no effective competition.
Right.
The competition is between the hospitals, not between the companies. And that's the difference.
Right. The profits are going to restrict competition, not to make their products better.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just on a brief note, Facebook still has Instagram and WhatsApp up in Russia. A lot of people pulled out, and there was another story that Shell has agreed to buy discounted Russian oil. So there's a boycott going on Twitter with Shell. So check that out. I want to say just really quickly, Florida is closed right now to tourism. I wouldn't come here right now. I did want to say that. I just want to warn and caution people because it's getting to be summertime and you might want to take a trip to Florida. Right now, they're creating policies to discriminate against LGBTIA, women, children, immigrants. The last two bills were an abortion ban and immigrant discrimination bill. So honestly, if you do come here, your tourism dollars are going to go and fund more policies like this, and it's just something has to stop. And honestly, if I'm going to tell you, if you do come here for a vacation, 4 out of the 10 people that help you, from valets to waitresses to that little person in the Disney costume, they're homeless. They don't have health insurance. They don't have a living wage, and they're still taking care of you, and they're being told your tips will make up for that. So, I mean, go to California. You know what I mean? Go to Texas if you want. I hate Texas.
No, don't even do Texas.
What I'm saying, if you're a conservative looking for a conservative state, it isn't it. And if you come here and you are anything other than a white, Caucasian, cisgendered male, you could face discrimination. And that could happen anywhere, and the state is okay with that. So I want to ask people not to come to Florida, please.
It's really interesting how the party of, less government supposedly keeps finding ways to create more government.
Right.
And that's for me as somebody who really likes the idea of less government, and this party claiming that that's exactly what they do. They continuously add in new pieces of government and new enforcement and new government overreach, and it's just absolutely wild to me.
The courts are gonna argue all of this, and he's just hoping that all gets to the Supreme Court and he's president by the time that happens. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I was thinking about this "Don't Say Gay" ban, and we were talking about that, and I was like, well, I don't understand who's talking about penises and vaginas at the age of 3.
No, that's
up to 3rd grade, and that includes 9 and 10-year-olds. And to me, that's devastating. That's devastating to somebody that's looking at a world around them and trying to come to terms with themselves in it, and being restricted and getting a buzzer, an electric shock every time they journey towards the word pansexual or non-binary. And that disgusts me. And so don't come here.
It's
cringe. It's cringe.
It's high cringe. It's insane, to be perfectly honest. And I don't understand why it is a thing that even needs to come up. I mean, realistically speaking, it's like, we never addressed sexuality in school. Like, I think even for my kids, I want to say it was like 5th or 6th grade when they finally started talking about, general health and sex and sexuality. And it's like,
sure.
There are more than one type of attraction out there. And it's like, okay.
But there's ways to go from that point forward. Like, I grew up in a different generation than you. I went to a friend's house. His dad had Playboy magazines. That's how I discovered life, right? But we all have a different way of discovering that journey. And it might happen with your peers at school, right? And
God.
And that's the thing. When you all start sitting at a lunch table together because you're all relating, then suddenly you're discriminated against. And if you can't address that discrimination, then you can't solve it. And those kids continue to get picked on, you know?
It basically, when it comes to LGBTQIA community and whether or not, as a straight person, you need to like open your mouth, think of it like Russia and Ukraine. Go the fuck home.
Right.
Leave them alone. You don't need to be involved. Period.
That's
End of
right.
story.
That's right.
It's if somebody chooses to involve you in that, it's because they think that you're the kind of person that they could talk to, that you're a safe person to talk to. Mm-hmm. You're not going to, think of them as another. And really that's all it boils down to. And this is why I can't stress this enough. Everybody go home. Yeah. Get your nose in your own fucking business. Right. You got your own shit to deal with.
Exactly.
Fucking leave other people alone. Like, let them do them, and that's all there is to it. It's like, I'm not a religious person. I'm not showing up to fucking churches to protest.
Right.
I'm not showing up to any of these other things. It's like, it ain't my fucking business, and it ain't your fucking business either. And there are times and places where we got to have some common ground. Everybody's a little bit different in what they view as common ground. Me personally, one of the more recent ones is watching people cheer on the fact that the Ukrainian government is handing out fully automatic weapons to its citizens because of the invasion. But the same people that are cheering on that refuse to even entertain the idea that one of us would have a gun, period. And that's that's an issue in and of itself. It's like, is the issue the gun? Is the issue the government? Because if it's the government, let me tell you something about why you'd want to own that gun.
Mm-hmm.
And other things that we've talked about. Realistically speaking, like Ukraine is in a unique situation. When it comes to an invasion, they've got Russia at their doorstep. For us, the only country that is even remotely capable of potentially launching a land war against us would be China, and they're not going to fucking do that.
Right.
They're not going to screw up their status quo for a land war, period.
No, they're going to wait until Russia is strangled and almost out of oxygen, and then offer them a pittance for a pound. Exactly. Russia's going to get raped by China at the end of all this. But think those. So there's these kids, and they're discovering things. Like, do your kids understand that non-binary is the base at school now? I think younger kids just assume that everyone else is non-binary until they are something, and there's a freedom to that. You know what I mean? But there's kids being weird about discovering it. And like in Florida, you can't create a social group at school inclusive of the LGBT. So it's very difficult for them to find other people that are also questioning this stuff. And so it's really difficult. And, Seattle's a little more liberal when it comes to that, which I find so surprising.
I mean, there's definitely some more liberal ideas about it, but what it boils down to is that I'm the kind of and this is where I piss everybody off. It's like, look, if there's a group of people who want to pray at school, let them pray at school. If there's a group of people who want to discuss non-binary and trans politics at school, let them discuss it.
Right.
When it comes to the freedom of exchange of ideas, the more normal your relation with other groups are, the easier it becomes. I know plenty of people who I would consider themselves very conservative and Christian. They have nothing against trans folks at all. In fact, some of them have friends that are trans, and even some of those friends don't understand, some of the politics that one group or the other has. And it's what it boils down to is that, we've talked about this so many times. People tend to lump. It's like, oh, if you're black, you have to be a Democrat. Never mind the fact that there's, this extremely conservative, devout, religious group of black people. It's a weird idea that you would have anything like this, or the fact that, there would be, LGBTQIA people that are very firm in their gun ownership, because owning a gun is a conservative value. It's like, no, like it's meant to protect yourself against any oppressor. And if you feel that your oppressor is the government, what better way to keep yourself from being oppressed than by making sure that you have the ability to ensure your rights? The reason that the Second Amendment, the reason the First Amendment exists and is alive and well is in this country is because the Second Amendment exists.
Sure. Okay. I don't think people understand that a Democrat in Florida is closer to a Republican than a Republican in California. You know what I mean? Like, and like, there's Joe Manchin. People would consider him a Republican in any other state, but he is a liberal in his state. And there's all these varying degrees to everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's this monolithic behavior because we can't comprehend 7 billion differences. We got to find the similarities. So we're this thing that constantly congeals in combined efforts and then dissipates because we have minute perspectives that go beyond generalization.
Jackson Hewitt wants to make sure you don't leave any money on the table this year because there's more at stake than ever. Thousands more. New tax credits that could mean a bigger refund. The tax experts at Jackson Hewitt are here to help you track down every last one. Like if you had a baby this year, or went back to school, or have been caring for a parent. Get credit for all you do. Work with a Jackson Hewitt Tax Pro and discover thousands of dollars in new tax credits. Learn more at jacksonhewitt.com.
Wow, I can't believe I spit that out that well.
Nice. That was a good one.
Nice. So let's see. How about we're going to get back to a Putin-Trump thing. I had a thought. So here's the real question with both of them. And it's basically either they were smart enough to know what they were doing was wrong and a lie, or that they're lying, or they're so stupid that they can't see that they're being manipulated and that what they're doing is wrong. Right? So either they're stupid or they're evil. And those are the two choices that we're using to, to compare the two. You know what I mean? And on that note, I want to say, I feel like we've kind of handed Joe Biden a broom and asked him to clean up a mess. And then we just keep pointing to things and going, you missed a spot. You know what I mean? Like maybe we could help sweep that up.
Yeah.
So Lindsey Graham said someone should kill Vladimir Putin. And,
that was dumb.
You know, it's these things. I woke up in the middle of the night to see Lindsey Graham on Fox News saying we should kill Vladimir Putin. And I wasn't sure if it was a dream or not because I have never in my life watched Fox News. And I was like, well, that's not good. And so I woke up and I was so happy to see that others, not just me, had seen that and said that's not good. Is that not good?
That is not good.
That isn't good, right?
It is not good. You know, for the same reason, that Vladimir Putin trying to assassinate Zelensky is not good. Like it's a war crime. It really is. And
right.
And that's the thing is that we have, especially as Americans, we have to get used to the idea of we need people to face justice for their crimes and not give them the way out of just having their brains blown out in a bunker.
Yeah.
So realistically speaking, assassinating a leader, bad decision. In fact, it's kind of what led to World War One. So I'd rather not have the odd world wars start with a world leader assassination, but unfortunately that
Republicans were high on the hog of going down into Central and South America, though, and killing leaders, putting in new ones and giving them a buttload of money to be nice.
Well, so were the Democrats, though.
Right. So we know how killing leaders goes, right?
Yeah, we've been pretty good at that, and that's not. That's a bad decision. It doesn't work the way that you think it does. You end up putting in somebody who grows to hate you even more than the last group of people did. Whereas if you would have just built a working relationship with the people that you weren't necessarily thrilled with, you probably would have had a lot more stability.
Right. So our dependence on Russian oil is 7% of our usage.
Yep.
So that's like, to me, it's like a drug addiction, right? We've acknowledged that we have an addiction, and we can go cold turkey, or we can try and maintain. I don't think maintaining works. So what are the options to like alleviate some of this stress, right?
So you have to remember there's a lot of different potentials out there. You have a lot of homes that are still fired by natural gas, for example. You have a lot of vehicles that still use oil. The reality is that if you want to remove that dependence on any foreign oil, not just Russia, not just the Saudis, what you have to do is you have to put in the infrastructure, and you have to put in the mechanisms for producing and harnessing alternative fuels, and you have to diversify that source. Period. End of story.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest issues, like especially is for like people, most average people, is that they've got a car that works just fine, but the idea of going in and having their car, trading in their car for an electric one and having all of that expense is just it's too much for them.
Right.
Which is why I would love to see more. I'd love to see more companies come up with retrofitting ideas, and I'd love to see GM have a retrofitting say, for example, a retrofitting division where they come up with ways that they can take old cars, remove all of the mechanical components, put in, drop in, the electrical components, and convert that way. And then suddenly, voila, you have this electric vehicle that, still mechanically sound.
You could just recall all the old cars for retrofitting.
or offer people the ability to finance retrofitting the car. Like, I love my car, like I think it's great, but because it has a combustion engine, I know that at some point I'm going to have to do a bunch of work to it in order to keep it going, and at some point that engine and transmission are going to give out. Like, that's just the reality of having that many mechanical parts. Whereas when you have an electrical engine, you have a lot fewer components. That means that there's a lot fewer things that can go wrong. That means that instead of having this humongous knowledge of where you're gonna have to go, sure, it's not going to be like the new Prius where you've got sensors out the ass. But if you're looking for something that's going to get you from point A to point B and be a hell of a lot cheaper to fill up, your electric car is going to, that's going to do a hell of a lot for you. And especially like if you're investing in solar and wind, like if you're looking at community options like we've talked about, for example, or even just setting your own house up to be able to supply you with solar, supply your car with solar or wind. Like, there is a great reality in which all of these older models could be upgraded to be electric vehicles. In fact, I saw somebody did an old school Ford F-100 as an electric truck, and I love that classic look of those old vehicles. But it's that there's the bummer of losing that old engine, because some of those old engines, man, there's just something about them. But at the same time too, the idea that you could take something that is still more than mechanically sound, give it some upgrades, and suddenly you have a 21st century vehicle that looks like something out of the 50s or 60s or 70s. That's fucking great. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's an important message everywhere. This is just another nudge saying we should go environmental. We should go green. That's just it.
And I mean, that's the reality is that, the only chance that you're going to have to then, fuck with somebody's economy is if you figure out how to blot out the sun. And if you do that, you're going to kill everybody.
Right. But yeah. So, but that's more long-term. I was thinking kind of short-term things like opening up American places, like Biden drastically cut the domestic drilling and stuff. We could open up that. And somebody had mentioned sign the nuclear deal with Iran so we can release their oil. You know what I mean? So in the short term, we just got to get off of the Russian stuff, I think, and then we can get off of the other stuff.
I mean, and this is where the other problem is the fact that there's an oil cartel to begin with.
Right.
and unfortunately, that's not something that we're going to change. Just remember, cartels are not a good thing. Whether it's drugs or oil, it's all bad.
Well, it'll change in the next 50 years, but we're trying to get through the next 4 years with this Russian aggression. And I think that, like I said, the sanctions are going to be permanent. We just have to get used to that. Like, we can't go back. We have to cut them out entirely, and it's better to do it now. And I understand, like, Europe is like 86% reliant on their natural gas and all the other stuff that comes from Russia. We got to stop that. We just do not. Now it's like something major happened, and we can't suck up to the abuser.
This is, and I would say that, this is a great example of why mass public transit is.
That was where I wanted to go when you were talking, was just mass autonomous fucking electric that goes everywhere transportation.
And that's, we've got it on a very small scale here in Olympia, but the reality is that, if I, walk for about 10 minutes, I'll be at a bus stop, and from there, all I got to do is hop on. I don't have to worry about fares. I don't have to do anything like that. And to me, that's a fantastic way, especially if gas prices get out of control, I'll probably be walking to the bus stop this summer.
Sure. And biking is amazing too.
Biking, get myself some exercise, because God knows I need it, and that's perfectly fine. Like, those are some great things that we can all do in order to make sure that we're gonna,
I like this idea. Ride your bike once a week to save Ukraine. Ride your bike once a week to save Ukraine. I like this.
I mean, absolutely. Take the bus to save Ukraine.
Well, we all have this pent up energy that there's nothing we can do. Go for a bike ride. When you come back, you'll be like, I did something. Yeah.
Get yourself a nice, comfortable bike and get yourself out there. Right. I mean, that's something that I need to do. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, we all need more exercise, I think. But yeah, I think that's cool. And I wanted to say, Georgia is super pissed. The country, like, they're like, oh yeah, wow, we can protest. So I'm so happy. I did want to get in the fact that, like, Georgia is all over that shit. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nope, it's fantastic.
Mitch McConnell says that plan we talked about last week. By the way, Rick the Republicans' plan to rescue America from all the great they left last time. And Rick says, yes, that is the plan. So even when given the chance, and I tagged Rick every day last week with that episode because it cracked me up. Rick the Republicans' plan to rescue America. One of my greatest titles, you know what I mean? And he says, yeah, he's doubling down. He's like, I want to tax seniors. I want to tax people on disability. I want to tax everybody. I want to shut down Medicare. I want to shut down Medicaid. I want to get rid of Social Security. I want to cut the budget and get rid of everything that is welfare. So that's interesting.
McConnell wasn't exactly very thrilled with Rick Scott over that one.
Yeah, I just think right now we have Republicans that are happy to be senators, and we have Republicans that want to be president. And right now, the people that are trying to jockey for position as president are really destroying everything going on now. It makes it so hard for Republicans to be normal when there's a Rick Scott or a Marco Rubio shouting about crack pipes or elders not paying their fair share. You know what I mean? Shit.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. I already did that, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So there is an issue, dude, that I never even thought of when it comes to Ukraine. So there's people, refugees, they're fleeing Ukraine. Some of them are non-binary. Some of them are transgender. And there's transgender people that are having a real difficult time crossing because their passport doesn't match their sexual presentation. You know? And I never even thought about that. When I think about this, I think about people fleeing in Poland going, get in here. I never think of them like stopping African students and saying, oh, you're black. No, this is going to take longer. Just get them in the country, right? And I didn't want to complain about Poland at the top of the show because 1.2 million people, and we've heard about 2 stories. So they're doing a fantastic job. But wow, I never thought about transgender folks.
Oh, and I think that's one of those things where it's like we don't we don't tend to think about how difficult it is for anybody to cross the border, number one, let alone anybody who has, presents very differently from what is on their paperwork.
Right.
And that's an issue here in America even, but imagine having to flee to another country,
right,
with paperwork that says one thing and people, looking at who's in front of them and going, this doesn't match up.
Right. Not get in here. We'll worry about it later. Right.
Right.
Turn around, go back. That one just doesn't.
And I think that's why, like, a lot of countries have started to change their passport system to allow for a, quote unquote third gender option, and allow people to update, their information, so that way it makes their paperwork and their presentation match up. Right. And so like that's one of those things that's a great thing, but there's still a lot of countries that have yet to get that far. Mm-hmm. And so, whether it's, people going on vacation, whether it's people that are, having to flee an active war zone, it's something that has to be taken into consideration.
Right.
And, oftentimes, this is especially something that I kind of studied, it's not in terms of necessarily world politics, but just in terms of, like data and usage. We often don't we think about our point of view when we're designing something, and when we go and test something, that's when we find out that from somebody else's point of view that something that we designed isn't exactly correct.
Right.
And it's called inclusive design. And so you start to see different interpretations, different presentations. Your word choice doesn't necessarily, hit the mark, but by updating your word choice, everybody's like, oh yeah, no, that all makes sense across the board.
Right. Just other.
It's, and that's the thing, is like, nobody wants to just be called other, that's the reality of it.
I think that's the only way that we can increase these policies is by marking other every chance we get.
Just human, period.
Human. I like that. I mean, it doesn't matter if I'm a male or a female when I'm getting on a plane or crossing a border. I've always said, unless it's between me and my doctor, nobody else needs to know what's in my pants. That's how I feel about it. Like when I applied for apartments, I put other. What race are you? Other. What gender are you? Other. Like the podcast, my emails, non-binary, because that's what I believe. I don't believe that we should be tagging ourselves that way,
Exactly. If somebody wants to tag themselves that way, great. If somebody doesn't want to tag themselves that way, great. To me, it's a matter of, it shouldn't matter how a person tags themselves. In fact, I would argue that in a lot of cases, it shouldn't just be collected, period, end of story.
Yep, me too. Okay.
And so, it's not necessarily just that, you have this third option. It's, something that just shouldn't be collected, and it boils down to, it's the government's job to make sure that, the person presenting themselves matches up with the paperwork that's given to them. And if the government confirms it, then who the hell cares?
Exactly. Okay. I just don't.
Whether or not a government will confirm that is now a different.
I think it'll change. Like Washington State was one of the first states to actually offer the non-binary designation on their driver's license, and California started going with that. I like it. I hope it doesn't diminish the non-binary advocacy by advocating that everyone should just be non-binary. Like, in public, you should just be non-binary. You know what I mean? To me personally, that's how I look at it. It's an easier way. The same as, he, she, we're all they. Like, the default should be they. If you don't know or you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, it's all right to call a male presenting person they. You know what I mean? It's okay to call a cisgendered male they. It's fine. It's not going to hurt their feelings. But if you actually get somebody that prefers they're going to like that. So get used to it. You know what I mean?
I mean, even like, for example, in German, when you use formal, it's very neutral. Formal is very neutral language, and even in German, there's been a real shift towards marking things as more neutral, and I think that's fantastic.
Sure.
In a lot of cases, like especially in English, like most of our descriptors are neutral. A and the, things like that.
Right now, I think it's Norway, somewhere in the Netherlands. their grade schools, they just call people hens. They're all hens. They're not boys. They're not girls. They're just hens that can play together. And I like that.
So, to me, it's one of those things where there's so much to learn, but if you make it a point to exclude people, don't be surprised when they're pissed off.
Right. And don't go out of your way to exclude people. So it's Women's History Month, Jeffrey. Isn't that exciting? Just for the record, I wanted to announce it for the month. My pronouns will be she and her because I'm in solidarity with women. We always go back to the old-timey women when we're like, ooh, who should we just talk about for Women's History Month? And I purposely didn't think of any. I didn't research any. I didn't look for any special women to promote because I think they all should be promoted. Is there any woman living doing something right now that you can think of off the top of your head? I'm doing the same thing, by the way. I purposely didn't put anything in the note because I wanted to know just randomly what women are inspiring to us just off the top of our heads without them trying to do it for a month, and
I think this is one of those things where it's really tough in that there's so many out there that there's so many women out there that we have to be proud of, and so many women that have done so many cool things. And it's not even just about recognizing the ones that are doing what they're doing now. It's about recognizing the ones that have done some amazing stuff in the past. I mean, you look at, like currently you've got, the woman who developed the thorium reactor. I think that's fantastic. You have the, you have the woman who helped develop the mRNA vaccines. I think that's amazing. But then you have things like we don't even necessarily think about that we take for, we kind of take for granted, like Hedy Lamarr, for example, where she is the creator of modern Bluetooth technology and frequency hopping.
I did not know that.
Beauty and brains. Oh, she was a genius. That was how we.
Isn't that the name of the mayor or governor in Blazing Saddles? Hedy Lamarr. What the fuck? Yeah, it is.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. Wow, that's so interesting. Sorry, not to get you off the tangent because I really liked where that was going. Public Access America.
It's always funny because, especially because as libertarians, we get a ton of shit, even amongst other libertarians.
I think political philosophy is a lot like religion, and where there's moments you have to go on faith and trust what somebody else is saying.
The main focus is just less dependence on the government because, we've seen how that's gone.
And you don't have to do that if you think about it in a human way.
More dependence on connections with each other.
You can always bring it back to what would one human do for another? What would 100 do for 100?
People looking out for people.
Find Public Access America anywhere you find your favorite podcast every Sunday and Thursday. And join the chat on YouTube at Public Access America every Sunday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Community's looking out for community.
Public Access America. History in the making, making history in the making, in the making, in the making, in the making, in the making.
Yeah, so I mean, it's absolutely incredible when you think about it. Yeah. Hedy Lamarr, born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler. She was from Austria. She was Austrian born.
That's awesome.
Yep. So it's quite incredible when you think about it. The fact that she basically the reason why we were able to have our nice little Bluetooth earbuds that we listen to, it's her. She's the reason why. She invented this frequency hopping technology that kept the Germans from jamming our radio signals.
Wow, I did not know that. I'm gonna have to put that in a note and talk more about that because that's cool.
Oh, it's Hedy Lamarr. That's Blazing Saddles. And the joke was they kept calling him Hedy Lamarr.
Right. Okay, that's cool.
That's now that I remember it. I was like, wait a minute. I know that it's not that. It's Hedley.
Yeah. Right. I got the idea because I listened to this podcast called Hysteria, and it's a female-based podcast. And I thought to myself, nobody's promoting like Alyssa Mastromonico, who actually worked in the Obama White House, right? And she was just amazing, and she's on the podcast, and she's just one of those humans that's super nice and super sweet, but very direct in her advocacy, and I like people like that. And I like Ilhan Omar. She takes a lot of grief and she has a lot of stands that I agree with, but she just wants to jump to the finished product and say, let's pass it and forget about it. But I want discussion on reform. I don't want a bunch of people that don't talk to people reforming something without getting my input first. So that's how that goes.
I would also shout out Liz Cheney. I don't necessarily agree with all of her politics, but the fact of the matter is that, she's facing a very hostile party that has, essentially changed into something that, I would argue shouldn't be called Republican anymore.
Right.
And she is having to face, she's facing down any number of issues because, she refuses to stand in line. Adam Kinzinger has gotten some flack, but he hasn't gotten nearly the amount of flack as Liz Cheney has.
Right. They attacked her, they're attacking her right now. Yeah, it's a great one. I don't agree.
I don't agree with her. And realistically, I think she was one of the House reps that voted most in line with Trump. Let's be honest.
She voted against the American Rescue Plan, Build Back Better, all of that stuff. She voted against that stuff.
Mm-hmm. She pretty much toes the line of what you would expect a Republican, a past Republican, to toe the line with. But the reality is that she saw the same issue with Trump that a lot of people who were conservative had with Trump, and that's what led them to vote for Biden.
Right.
It wasn't that Trump, didn't have conservative policies. It was that Trump was a power-hungry maniac, and he was going to do whatever he could to keep that power. And
Trump had no policies. People around him had conservative policies.
There's that too. So
I don't think he had any policy other than filling his own pocket. And nothing makes me laugh more than part of the wall falling down. You made me so happy this whole week. I just kept thinking about, the wall falling down. So thank you for that. I like it. I'm going to stick with Liz Cheney. I like that one. We should support her.
I support her through the investigation. I don't necessarily support policies. And that's perfectly fine. John McCain always said that, reasonable people can have reasonable disagreements. You attack the method and not the man.
Right.
And this is, very much the case. I guarantee you that there are people out there that I'm going to have disagreements with simply because I don't agree with their policy. I don't agree with the way that they're trying to get there. But that doesn't mean that I value them any less.
Yeah. That's why I attacked Marco Rubio the way I did. It wasn't because I hate him. It's because I wanted him to be a better Republican. You know what I mean? And then on the news one day, I heard, well, the Democrats and Marco Rubio are in agreement. And I was like, did I do something? Which part of what I said to him, got through to him?
Right. And that's just it is that, there are places where we can agree and those have to be fleshed out, period, end of story.
But how do we find where we disagree? And there's a solution to it if we're just automatically solidified at a bulkhead against each other,
Well, that's the problem with current politics is that we might agree on the end goal, but because we don't do my version or your version, we just aren't going to do any version, and that's just dumb.
Right. Yeah, it's a stalemate, and that's where we were on abortion and guns. Democrats were like, we won't go after your guns. You don't go after abortion. And then they went against abortion. So now it's going against guns. And now there's a new battle. Please donate. I'm getting, hey, will you help me? Will you donate? No, I won't donate. Sorry. We don't believe in donating. I'll donate my time and effort, Sorry, Nikki Fried. I really like you. She is the agriculture commissioner that has won statewide going against Ron DeSantis. And you will find us promoting her and Val Demings on Twitter, but I'm not going to give anybody money. Sorry, I can't afford it, Oh, man. All right. I think in the next hour, we're going to talk about our lizard people mentality because, the Republicans are onto us. We are lizard people and we have to eat babies to maintain this luscious skin. But I think there's a misconception that we can eat minority babies, but we can't. We'll just turn brown then. So we need, rich, entitled babies to feed on, white babies. I don't know.
Jesus Christ.
I'm just stalling at the end of the show. I'm sorry, having a good time. It's a teaser. It's a teaser.
Next on Eating Babies on live stream. No, yeah, that's what the fuck. No, it's one of those. That's
yeah.
I love a good conspiracy theory. That's the thing, is I love a good one. This isn't even good.
Right.
That one's not even good.
No, it makes me laugh. So
like my favorite conspiracy theory, especially kind of going back.
Yeah, what is your favorite conspiracy theory?
My favorite conspiracy theory was MK Ultra. That one was fucking wild.
What's that? Why don't I remember that?
Well, that was probably because you were part of MK Ultra. No, so MK Ultra. So there was this conspiracy theory that went around for a long time that the American government was working on mind control. Turns out we were using things like LSD and other things like psilocybin. We were trying to mix chemicals in order to figure out if we could tamper with somebody's water supply, could we essentially cause chaos and panic and control.
Right.
It turns out that if you just send somebody on a bad trip, that's not mind control. And so all of that work that they did, there was this, this whole list of issues that, the government was trying to do that. And then when the paperwork for MK Ultra comes out, we find out, oh yeah, we really did that. And that one was fucked up. Or, the whole, your government is spying on you. Oh, our government would never do that. Then we find out from Edward Snowden about PRISM and how they really were just spying on ordinary Americans.
There's stinger technology in every city and on the border. It's being used against immigrants too. And it collects all the data and information that goes to any cell tower. It just collects it. That's what happens in Tallahassee. They have stinger technology. Yeah, you're being recorded and watched all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So my favorite was actually the Space Force thing, right?
Oh my God.
People believe that there's a mission to Mars. And it dawned on me, we have an atmosphere because we have a core that rotates, creating a magnetic field that allows protection from the solar flares, right? Something that Mars does not have. So even if we go and terraform and create the polar ice caps to drip down on the planet and create this new atmosphere, the first temporary or small solar flare that comes along is going to rip it apart. We're never going to be able to populate Mars. And I think that's so funny. Nobody thinks about that. Is it really Jason? Is Elon Musk planning to go to Mars based on the fact that we might be able to terraform the planet into a usable place? No, he's not. I'm not smarter than Elon Musk, right?
Well, I think that there's I think one of the issues there is that Mars makes sense in terms of having the ability to planet hop. It doesn't necessarily make sense in terms of the ability to settle.
Right.
Simply because if we could, you're essentially going to have to build systems that are going to generate oxygen, that are going to supply fresh water, that are going to do a number of things. And I just don't know that that's feasible.
That's on your way to the asteroid field, the asteroid belt. That's not populating Mars. It's building industrial complexes on Mars.
And that's the thing is I think that there is actually some viability in doing that, but it's one of those things where the real answer is going to be deep space mining, aka mining the asteroid belt, and being able to get the raw materials from there. And it's just, Mars is going to be a jumping off spot before you get to the next one, until you can figure out how to create self-contained systems that are going to capture enough moisture and capture moisture from, glaciers and asteroids in the asteroid belt. That's really what it boils down to.
I love it. All right, those are our conspiracies. Thanks for listening to Public Access America. My name is Jason. His name is Jeffrey, and we will be back right after this song.
To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. This is our moment. This is our time. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. Yes, we can. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we prove once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals, democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbow. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life.
Ask not.
Yes, we can.
What your country can do for you.
I have a dream.
Ask what you can do for your country.
I, poor little children,
Yes, we can.
one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression.
In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
That's how winning is done.
Welcome to Public Access America.
Yes, we can.
Sunday live streams on YouTube.
I wanted to run out of that tunnel for my dad.
On Twitter,
What?
Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Smart Radio,
Public, and Spotify.
Yes, we can.
Public Access America. History in the making, making history in the making.